Try to forget the money-damaging challenges of 2020 and have a positive attitude to achievement in 2021, especially financial stability and growth. In our true BizVision Awaken 21 theme, I'm proud to bring you a guest today who not only make you think about money, but possibly help you make that vital change that will really make the sunshine for you this year. That's not just a throwaway introduction line, but the introduction to a show that I'm certain will get you grabbing pen and paper and watching again and again and telling others to do so. My guest has too vast a financial pedigree to list here in our limited time. Importantly, though, he's the author of the acclaimed book, Discover Your Money Temperament, a common sense guide to financial security. Now, it's not another book about money, but instead a book about money behavior. So let's meet Ted McLyman. Welcome, Ted.
Malcolm, it's a pleasure to be here. How are you today?
It's snowy here in Northeast England, and you'll be lovely and warm in Nashville, Tennessee, aren't you?
Well, yes, warm is relative, but yeah, I've been to your area of the world, and I fully empathize with you.
Okay. Well, let's put it this way. We're socially distanced enough, aren't we?
There you go.
Okay. This Ted McLyman show is in our usual web show 3 parts. In part 1, he'll take you through discovering your money temperament. In part 2, we'll chat about his money behavior system. And in part 3, he'll reveal how to make it work for you. Ted, before we get started on part 1, though, give us a brief interview of who Ted McLyman is, what you've done leading up to the book. Oh, and don't miss out your Marine Corps career. Over to you, Ted.
Pleasure. It's, again, pleasure to be here. I am an entrepreneur, business owner, author, done a lot of crazy things. My relationship with money, fortunately, my wife has chronicled my smart and not so smart decisions and has an opportunity to bring that to my attention from time to time. But I grew up in a middle-class family, working-class family in upstate New York, went to college, graduated from Colgate University, and decided it was time to go see the world. And to me, it was joining the military was the option to do that. It was an opportunity to get out of the cold and the snow and the gray. And to make a long story short, the Marine Corps had the wisdom to send me to Hawaii as my first duty station, where I was introduced to sunglasses, sunscreen, and money issues. Hawaii is a high-cost area. And as a young lieutenant, one of my responsibilities was to take care of my troops, my Marines and sailors. And I found that it takes a young person with money for the first time in their lives to do just incredibly crazy things. And it was there it first hit me that money and money behavior was more important than the technical aspect, because I had people that were doing crazy things with money that was leading to productivity issues, security issues, domestic violence, substance abuse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it became obvious to me that my formal background in training, in economics primarily, was not resolving what I was seeing the behavior on the ground. At that time, I had no intention of staying in the Marine Corps. I actually put in a letter to get out. They wouldn't let me out, but they did send me to graduate school, my first degree, and I ended up teaching at the United States Naval Academy, where I taught economics. And there I found out it took smart young people to make really bad money decisions. And it was so bad that as an institution, the Department of the Navy and the Marine Corps were looking for us at the economics department to come up with a solution. Why were we having problems? Because we had young lieutenants and ensigns. They were being thrown out of the military because of bad money choices. From there, I did some normal Marine Corps things. And incidentally, I was introduced to single malt by a major in the British Royal Marines, and late at night he could pontificate about whether it was a north or south flowing glen, but that's a different story in its own right. But came back from Desert Storm, ended up as an aide to the Secretary of the Navy for Financial Management, and in that capacity, I worked with our political establishment, worked with the House and the Senate on budget issues, and there I found out that the political class doesn't have a clue how money works. And that is all emotion and behavior. Retired, went into the financial planning practice, started my own firm, had one in Washington, D.C., sold that, moved down to the Augusta area just outside of Atlanta, started another firm there. And at that time, I started working with hundreds of clients and training advisors and the like. And I found out that what I was taught about money just was not working. And as a result, I started to question the traditional approach to financial planning, the traditional approach to financial wellness. And it became obvious to me, particularly after the 2008 meltdown and after writing my first book, that we needed to have a change in focus. We needed to move from product and service to behavior. And that's where I am today. I'm on my third book. This is all I do now. I train advisors, coaching and an individual basis. But my goal is to change the dialect, to change the world, because I've found as traveling around the world and dealing with lots of different cultures that there's some certain universals that we all deal with, but it's not addressed in classic economics and classic finance.
Brilliant. I think you're in a great part of the world, Nashville, for that sort of characteristics that you've just been talking about there. When I was there one night in a nightclub, the guy that wrote that song, can you remember it? It's 4 a.m. He was there and he was playing, and he says, it's only 2:00, so I'll sing it twice for you. But I think that's,
there you go.
There you go. Let's move on. Let's move on to part one. And I make no apology, viewers and listeners, for using Ted's brilliant book as the framework for this show, as I think it's what most of us need to shake off 2020 and not let it drag on into 2021. Ted tells us about why and how we discover our money temperament. Ted.
Well, let me ask all your listeners a question. Have you ever been on a mission to go to the supermarket or a store to pick something small up, and you run in very quickly, and all of a sudden you find out you've got a cart or a buggy full of about $150 worth of stuff you had no intended of buying, but you did? And then you get back to your car and drive home and find out that you did not buy what you initially intended to purchase.
I'll just put my hand up to that. I agree.
There you go. I mean, it's who we are. It's a very human endeavor. Well, after working with a lot of clients on an individual basis and helping them with their financial plans, I realized that my job as a financial advisor was to manage behavior, not money. Money is fairly simple. And it became obvious to me that the common denominators of a modern society are people and money and people. And I found across the world, we do neither very well. So unless you live on a subsistence farm someplace in the northern England, you have to get out and learn how to manage this and do this. Well, classic economics says we're all rational, and given enough information, we will make perfect decisions. Well, I ask you, how is that working out? Not very well. I challenge you, take a look at your garage, look at your attic, look at your basement, take an inventory of what's there. And I ask you, why did you buy it? What was it for? What was the value? And then all of a sudden, in all of our cultures, we seem to think that you reach a certain age or a certain position in life, then all of a sudden, magically, you're going to figure this out. It doesn't work that way. So I started challenging the traditional dogma about financial planning. And I started getting into some pretty heated discussions with my superiors and senior people in the financial community and the academics about, why don't we start talking about behavior? And I got this blank stare, like, who are you and what we're doing? Well, to make a long story short, this is what I've determined. Number one, humans are not hardwired to work well with money. It seems that the behavior that kept us alive in the forest eons ago is killing us at the mall. We are emotional animals who think. We are not thinking animals with emotions. So this premise that just because I give you one more spreadsheet or one more data point that you're going to take a good decision is ridiculous. Our biology gets in the way. That's number one. Our biology basically says we are hardwired to be comfortable in small groups. We're herders. We like people like us. We like to be comfortable. We have natural biases the way our brain works. It's not as efficient as everybody thinks it is. It's not a computer. We process information selectively. We remember selectively, and these are called biases. So number one, our biology gets in the way. Number two, it's our belief set with money. Our belief set is established by mid-adolescence. You can fix it, but it's hard. So fundamentally, where you were with money in middle school is where you are today. And finally, culture. Culture is probably the most significant impact on money and money spending than anything I can think of. Malcolm, you've traveled around the world. The behavior of where you are right now with money is different than London, which is different than Calcutta, which is different in Berlin, different again in New York City, and Nashville is a whole different circus.
Do you think somewhere then, Ted, that your money temperament is conditioned or formed by jealousy, greed, or, the neighbors have got that, I've got to have it, or children saying, my friends have got Nike or whatever it may be, I've got to have that?
Oh, absolutely. And again, that goes back to the way we're naturally wired. If we were all rational people, we would all look alike. We would dress alike, and we'd have the same stuff. We would do a simple value analysis, marginal utility versus marginal return, and all that kind of crazy stuff. And no deference to Adam Smith. But what we realize that emotionally, our emotions trump everything. We are emotional animals. There are about a couple thousand biases that we call them in my field, where people just naturally are wired to do things. And envy, greed, all of those emotions are human emotions. So what we have to understand is our default is to be human with money. I call that your thinking brain. I believe that a brain, just to keep this simple, when I write about these items, I keep it incredibly simple. I write books for people that will not buy books about money, but probably should. And I try to distill all this very complicated neuroeconomics, behavioral economics, and put it in the common man terminology that says, here's what you got to understand. You got a feeling brain. You spend 99% of your time in your feeling brain. It's emotional. It's automatic. It's on autopilot. You don't have a conscious knowledge of what you're doing. And that's where the greed, emotion, envy, all those very human emotions that make us who we are, but also make us do really stupid things with our money. And then we've got our thinking brain, where every now and then we spend a little bit of time up there. But from a neurological point of view, moving from our feeling brain to our thinking brain actually hurts. And think about it. When you sit down and do your taxes, that's a conscious effort to move from your feeling brain to your thinking brain. And you want to get out of that space as quickly as possible. So the problem most of us have, and we don't even know this is happening, 95 to 99% of our spending decisions are on autopilot. They're non-conscious. We don't even think about it. You stroll through a store and you put things in your cart and you buy them. Why? Why do you have a certain brand you like? Because you're human. So my mission is to make people understand that this is a natural behavior and not beat ourselves up over it. But we have to figure out a strategy to accommodate our natural humanness with money and put it in a perspective that we can also survive. Because this was not an issue back a few hundred years ago when, if you got more than 15 miles away from the farm, that was a major opportunity. There was not a lot of options. And the game changer is longevity. Back a few hundred years ago, if you made it to 25, you're having a good year. Well, it's not unusual now to make it well into your 90s, to have high quality of life, have more disposable income than we ever have in any generation, in any culture in the world. So that brings up new challenges. And we need to have a different dialogue and a different way of looking at this. And for those of you in business, remember, know yourself, know your client, do no harm. And that means understanding how you naturally relate with money, and then have an understanding that your people you're working with, both your employees and your clients, may have a different way of processing information, and their money temperament is different than yours. That's a huge new frontier.
Yeah. Excellent, Ted. Except you've just frightened my wife when you said that many people are going to live into their 90s. I think she's had enough of me in lockdown already. Look, let's move to part 2 and introduce us to your money behavior system, the why and how and what it is, what it does, and how we get started.
Perfect. As I said, I was a financial advisor for a number of years, owned a couple of firms, and in the financial process, there's a standard linear process. Usually starts with goal setting, identifying how much money you have to work with, how much time you have, and anybody with a calculator then can plug in some data and say, hey, if you tell me you've got this much amount of time, I give you this rate of return, I can give you anything you want, and you'd be a gazillionaire in 25 years. How do you like me so far? Buy this product. Life is good. See you next year.
Yeah.
And what I was finding is we have some technical terms in the financial planning world, and I said that's the technical word. It doesn't work that way. So I needed to, when I first got into this, I thought I'd be talking about fixing the financial planning process. And what I learned was it is very efficient and very effective at the back end. But what was missing is the front end. The front end piece is what nobody I know of is talking about when you're talking about financial literacy, financial wellness, and financial planning is the behavioral piece. So I developed my money behavior system. I talk about it in the book. It's part 2. And it begins with a very, very different approach with what's important about money. And it's not goal setting in the traditional sense. We all have goals, but you have big V goals and small V goals. Big V goals are emotional. They have to do with family and legacy and giving back. And little V goals are stuff. You know, do I need the newest vehicle? Do I need, fill in the blank? So I have a 5-part model, and it's remarkably simple and it's easy to follow, but I don't understand why people aren't putting this into practice or haven't talked about this before. It begins what I call your money values. Your money values are simply those things in life that are most important to you, that if they are not satisfied or accomplished will cause you emotional anxiety. And then what's that going to cost? And for most people, again, it's not stuff, it's legacy, family, a cause. And I don't care what it is. If that's what's driving you, that is the emotional driver of everything you do with regard to money. So that's number one. And that's a difficult decision, a process. And I can tell you, after sitting down with hundreds of clients, the feedback I got most often is, why has nobody ever talked to me like this? And I can usually get people looking at each other as a couple and say, I didn't know this was important to you. And if you want to leave, half your estate to your cat, your dog, or your favorite football team, and that's your driver, I'm sorry, that is your emotional driver. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I'm saying that's what it is. So first is your money values. Everything moves from there, and you move that direction non-consciously. Next is your money temperament. Your money temperament is simply how you're naturally wired with money, and everybody is different, and there's no right or wrong. To keep it simple, let's say you're a spender or a saver. I don't care. But in traditional financial planning, we try to break that behavior. But in my mind, you're hardwired at birth based on your humanity, if you will. It's in your genes, as you have a propensity to get emotional satisfaction out of spending money or emotional satisfaction out of saving money. It only becomes a problem at the extremes. You can be just as dysfunctional as a spender and just as dysfunctional as a saver. Most people do not fall at the extremes. They're somewhere in the middle. And all I want to do is let's identify what that is. Instead of making me very annoying to you, try to change a behavior that is hardwired in you. I want to identify it and use that as a basis to help you achieve what's important about money to you, your money values. So that's money temperament. Next, money knowledge. Money knowledge is not technical knowledge. It's a little bit of it because you've got to have some base mark there. But to me, when I say money knowledge, how do you process information? Are you a visual learner? Are you an auditory learner? Are you a tactile person? Are you going to dive in and make this happen? Because how you process information will significantly impact your success or failure in achieving your money values. And the financial community, by definition, tends to be very numbers oriented. They want to give you spreadsheets. But if you're not that type of person, and most humans are visual, you've got to be able to stop and say, wait a minute, this is confusing. I don't want to read this. I don't want to see another spreadsheet. Show me a graph. Show me. So as an individual, you have to align and make sure that the information you're given is appropriate for how you process information. Then you take a look at your values, your temperament, and your knowledge and say, let's build a strategy that supports those 3 foundational pieces. The strategy needs to help be aligned with your temperament and the way you process information to help you move towards the values that are important to you. Then the last piece is what I call your money action plan, which is the traditional financial planning drill. The industry as a whole goes right to the plan and either discounts, tries to change, or makes it very uncomfortable dealing with values, temperament, and knowledge. Or the way I like to put it, the industry as a whole is a one-size-fits-all cookie cutter approach and discounts the you, where you should have a one-size-fits-you strategy to help you move to the one-size-fits-you, your relationship with money. That's the money behavior system.
I think that's brilliant, Ted. And as I said to the very beginning of our meeting today, that this is something people will want to watch and watch again. But let's move on to part 3, because I've got a way around for them. First, let me remind you of Ted's website URL, which is tedmclynam.com. And I'll read that out for my listeners. Ted, as in TED, MCLYNAM.com, tedmclynam.com. So go there and sign up for his free course, which is called An Introduction to Discover Your Money Temperament, a common sense guide to financial security. Okay, Ted, part 3. Now, we've been talking about the personal side. Let's talk about business. How should a business leader or owner go about making the system work for his or her business? I get the personal finance bit, but show us the business usage and why leaders need to be getting your book and doing it now, not just when they've got time.
Right. As humans, let's talk at the small business entrepreneurial environment, and then we'll talk a little bit about the corporate environment. Let's talk about the small business owner, the entrepreneur, the self-employed person. You have to understand that you moved into your career, your business, for whatever reason, but it was emotional. And everything you're doing with your business is non-consciously influenced by your natural relationship with money. You cannot have a business and not deal with money. It's a factor of having a business. Well, you're going to find very quickly that you're certainly good at some things and not so good at others. I find it interesting that a lot of people that are entrepreneurs that are very good at getting things done and moving in one direction, but not so good on the details. Well, one of the things I found with a business person is, number one, you have to benchmark who you are. And it doesn't matter who it is, because if you're going to be successful in business and you're going to be successful with money, you have to understand that your temperament is going to drive you through the different phases of building your business and determine success or failure. I know business people. I had a partner one time that was one of the most brilliant analytical people I ever met in my life, but I couldn't take him out in public. I'm seriously, he could be in a room of clients by himself and just show up and scare half of them because he was so freaking smart, but he was an analytic. Yeah. And people didn't talk like that. And he wondered why he couldn't relate with people, because he was assuming everybody processed information the same way he did, and he failed miserably. On the other hand, I know people that are wired just the opposite, and they never get it going because they discount the need for accountability. They discount the need for paying taxes. So as a business person, what I say, number one, is benchmark who you are and don't deny who it is. Most people on this call have done some type of behavioral profile, be it Myers-Briggs, DISC, and there are thousands of them. Well, this is a subset of that. Okay, I'm an extrovert. I know that. I have strengths in that area. I have weaknesses in that area, but my money temperament is a subset of that. I understand my personality profile, but I understand my money profile. They work together. They don't work in isolation. Most business strategies, most business plans assume that you can magically turn on this rational button in the back of your head that says, all of a sudden, I'm a CPA and I'm very comfortable doing all this advanced analysis. If you ever filled out a business plan to try to take a loan and you read what that document is, I don't know many people that are wired to do that are actually in business themselves. So you have to understand there's a fundamental disconnect the way our brains work. Our feeling brain likes going to work and interacting with people and moving towards success and everything that it brings with it. Our thinking brain may or may not be comfortable with the technical things that are inherent with that process. So what's that mean to a business owner? Know who you are and then outsource, delegate those areas that you're not naturally wired for. That is not rocket science. When I do consulting, most of the businesses that I work with that are in failure or having trouble, what they will find is the entrepreneur, the business owner, the person that got them to where they are today has now assumed roles that he or she is not wired for.
Yeah.
And they're doing things now that did not get them where they are. And all of a sudden it's not a sustainable model. Because all of a sudden they want to be a marketeer. They want to be their own HR department. They want to be their own accountant. They want to be their own lawyer. When in reality, they're a vibrant entrepreneur, creative person, designing stuff and making stuff. The best thing I can tell everybody in business is know yourself. Then know your client. Your client is also wired differently. And again, when I do consulting, I call it align the meatball. And that's a metaphor for an aircraft carrier. In an aircraft carrier in the US, when you're landing on the back of an aircraft carrier, there's a light that lines up, and when the light is lined up, you're clear to land. If it's not aligned, you're going to have a very bad day very quickly. So what happens for most businesses, you will naturally over time move into the market and have people gravitate you that are kind of very much wired like you are. That's natural, but it's unconscious. So when you're knowing your client, realize that your client also has money values, money temperament, money knowledge. They process information differently than you do. Just because you love the widget you invented, not everybody might. And trying to force your behavior and your natural money temperament on them can be a recipe for disaster.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, Ted. I love your thinking. Ted, I aim to start the year of 2021, bringing our BVTV new viewers and listeners inspiration and action to make their 2021 a sunny one. You've certainly made the clouds part. In this special Ted McLyman BVTV web show, I've been talking to the author who will help you successfully manage the new rules of money. Thank you, Ted McLyman.
Malcolm, it has been a pleasure, and I hope you eventually see sunshine.